The Beyond the Fame podcast is fed by Lido Pizza. Lido Pizza never cuts corners. For menu and locations, visit LidoPizza.com. And of course, this podcast would not be possible without our longtime title sponsor, the Hollywood Casino at Charlestown Races in West Virginia. Rounding out May entertainment includes the Chippendales on May 13th and 31st. Details and tickets at HollywoodCasinoCharlestown.com. Must be 21 to enter the casino floor and attend a show. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Welcome to the newest episode of Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. I'm your host, Jason Fraley, picking the brains of the top filmmakers, musicians, and artists of our time. The chart-topping Australian band Jet is ready to rock the 930 Club in Washington, D.C. on June 2nd. I spoke to longtime bass player Mark Wilson about the band's journey to record smash hits like Are You Gonna Be My Girl, Look What You've Done, and Cold Hard Bitch. Hey, Mark Wilson. Hey, thank you so much for joining the show today.
Thanks for having me.
We are talking to the awesome bass player for the awesome rock band Jet, which is going to be playing 930 Club in Washington, D.C. on June 2nd. And this is a real treat because you're joining us from like halfway around the world. You're all the way in. Where exactly in Australia? It's like a 14-hour time difference.
Yeah, I'm in Melbourne. It's tomorrow. It's tomorrow morning for you. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm about to go to bed and you're waking up.
Exactly. So when we fly to the USA, we arrive 2 hours before we left. So you can get your head around that. So when we land in LA, we land 2 hours before we departed.
You're
so
time travelers.
We go back in time. Yeah, exactly.
Do you use a DeLorean or how do you time?
Yeah, we have them down here.
1.21 gigawatts of band.
Yeah.
I love
85 miles an hour.
Yeah, exactly.
Melbourne, and we're just changing to sort of, I guess you call it fall, from like a pretty long summer. It's just started to get real cold, but it's that beautiful, crisp, nice weather.
Awesome.
It's sunny,
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, we're here about ready to go from spring to summer here in the DC, Maryland.
That's why we tour this time of year. That's why we're jumping on a plane tomorrow morning to get out of just to skip the first part of winter over here.
Very smart. Wait, so you literally hop on the plane tomorrow morning?
Tomorrow morning, yeah, tomorrow morning.
Well, safe travels. Well, then this is even more of a treat that you're taking the time to join us. I appreciate it. I believe part of your tour last year was the U.S., I believe. So welcome back.
We did 2 New York shows and a Nashville show and 2 L.A. shows, and then we thought, we'll come. That went really well, so we thought we'll come back and do what we kind of call an East Coast run, obviously, but it's not really. It's kind of East Coast, Midwest, and like down to the south a bit. But, and then later in the year, we'll come back and do more West Coast, Texas, and that kind of stuff like that.
Gotcha. So when, A, have you played 930 Club before? And B, when was the last time you were even in this general area?
I played 930 Club a few times. I heard someone told me it moved, but it looks to be the same. When I looked online, it looks to be the same place.
Well, it did move. Originally, it was an old location, but it's been at the current one for quite a bit now. So yeah.
Yeah. Okay. No, we played there a bunch of times. I remember they used to do a early morning show, and all the bands would play like at 7 a.m. I can't remember what it was called. I remember doing that at the 930 Club. I don't know, it's a radio station, but
was it DC 101 maybe? Like Kegs and Eggs or something?
Yeah. That's it. Kegs and Eggs.
Kegs and Eggs. Yeah.
It's hard to get a rock band out of bed at the best of times, but to get out and play some rock and roll that early in the morning takes Kegs and Eggs.
I love that you remember the name of it and that it's Kegs and Eggs. I'm surprised
you remembered it.
That together. Yes, that's DC 101. It's a rock station in DC.
Yeah.
But thanks for coming on my show today. Let's tease the set list a little bit. I mean, assume you sprinkle in all the huge hits from over the years.
Absolutely.
But also, are you playing like the newer singles? Like you dropped Hurry last year.
Hurry. We'll play Hurry, and also we'll play the B side from that. It's in Italian, Avventura, which we recorded. Nick sings it in Italian because he speaks Italian because he was living there at the time. So we did it, and we did it because it was like we were going to just release it in Italy, but we thought, let's make it the B side for this track for Hurry, and it's really fun.
It's called
Avventura.
Avventura. Is that a nod to that Italian movie La Avventura by Antonioni back in the day?
No, well, it's it's a Lucio Battisti song that we heard because Wilson, I think it was Wilson Pickett, did a cover of it in Italy. And he
Wow.
basically, we heard this cover of a Lucio Battisti song by Wilson Pickett back in the 60s. And he's done it. He's obviously done the same as us. Like, oh, this is a cool Italian song. I'll cover it when I go there. And he sort of sings. So we're almost covering his cover because he sings half of it in English, half of it in Italian. So we're doing that. But I think when we go back to Italy, we're playing some shows with the Black Keys over there in
Nice.
July.
Nice.
And I think Nick might sing it all in Italian because Nick's like spot on Italian. He lives there.
Yeah.
So,
Nice.
and we're actually rehearsing up some brand new ones that we've written and started recording, but not released yet, just because, playing the same set over and over, we need to add things in to keep us excited as well in a way. So, and also the hardcore fans would love to hear a couple of new songs, and just to prove people that we haven't been lazy, it'd be nice to prove to them we've been doing some work.
I see you have a pair of scissors in your hand. Is that so you can cut things from the set list?
No, yeah. No, you're in my studio right now, so I've got all my you can see if I
show us around.
I've got all my guitars and
nice.
Over down there, all my vintage basses that aren't coming on the road because it's too expensive.
I love it.
All my stuff's already freighted.
I love the records on the wall and the instruments. It's awesome. I appreciate it. Did I hear you guys were gonna? Hurry Hurry and Unadventura and the new songs you're working on. Is that gonna all be part of a new album that drops? Is it gonna be like later this year or when? What can we?
Yeah, we're working on that. Yeah, we're working that way. Well, we're just chipping away at it a bunch. Like we've all got other projects and other things going on in our lives, so we kind of we don't really get in and sit there in one session and make a record. You know what I mean? So we're kind of doing it over time.
Yeah, well, in between all the touring,
but it's coming along.
Yeah,
exactly. Touring and then other projects and other life things, and we're all in the same city at the moment, so that helps. That helps a lot.
Awesome. Well, in addition to teasing the show like we did, I also want to whenever I have bands on, I like sort of painting their journey and along the way sort of some behind the scenes stories of some of the hits that they're going to hear if they buy a ticket to the show. Because a lot of times people are like, oh yeah, I remember that song, and then they buy the ticket. So that's why I like.
Yeah. Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
So you, Mark Wilson, were born in 1980 in Australia, but about what, an hour?
That's right.
Hour from Melbourne, about?
Yeah, about an hour in just a different. It's like a regional town. Big Ford factory there. It's like a mini Detroit. We call it Detroit because it's called Geelong. We call it Detroit because it's like a little industrial. It's a little industrial town down the road. About I'd say 80 miles down the road in your language.
Detroit Rock City.
Yeah.
I love that.
So
I love that.
Yeah. And there was a lot of good bands came out of there when I was younger. Kind of sort of grungy kind. It was it was a bit of a divey city. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful town now, because everyone's moved there because it's too expensive to live in Melbourne. Yeah. But back then it was a bit more grungy, and a lot of the bands came out of there with a bit more punk kind of stuff. Bit more edgy. And I moved up to Melbourne basically as soon as I could, because if you want to do anything in the sort of art and music scene, you kind of had to, you met all the people up here in the music scene, and that's where I met the boys from Jet.
Awesome. And obviously the local scene you're saying was kind of grungy and punk, but how about other artists? I want to know what bands you were listening to, either Australian bands or, world famous bands.
I mean, when I was in high school, it was UMI, who's an Australian band, very famous, Australian band. They were kind of the ones that kicked off the kind of music, I guess, that we play. Everyone sort of looks to them because they were playing cool 60s, 70s rock and roll, style rock and roll. Mm-hmm. But you could go see them live, So them, but in high school, I love I love Pavement and things like that, sort of American indie rock. Pavement and love Pavement. I was obsessed. Beatles, obviously, huge fan. Stones, Neil Young, all that stuff. Our generation sort of grew up on, because we're I'm 45 now, so it was sort of parental record collection was your kind of first look at music. So you'd get into Zeppelin, and then you'd find a Cars record, and that way. Now it's a completely different way of discovery. But then it was and then you would go on that journey where you're like, oh, I love that Led Zeppelin song. And then you find out it's a Leadbelly song, actually. So then you find out about Leadbelly, and then you find out about all this blues stuff that
And then you
opens the
go
door.
all the way back and you keep going.
And even like growing up in the early 90s, early mid 90s, like, small town, like there was no, like all of us from our era, you had to do a lot of the discovery yourself. There's nowhere to find out. It was like there was like gatekeepers at record stores you'd have to talk
Yeah.
about, or people who you'd older people's older brothers. They were Spotify back then. It was people's
Yeah.
older brothers and sisters would be like, have you heard Husker Du or something like that?
Yeah, that's true. Because all of the big, I guess the internet explosion in Napster and
Mm.
LimeWire and all that would have been like, you would have probably already been, in your 20s when that really all came about. Yeah.
Yeah, like I think it was in between our first two albums is when all that stuff's like when our song was on the first iPod commercial, So I mean that sort of gives you a timestamp of what
Yeah.
that's when the music industry changed to like, okay, people will happily, people can. I mean, everything changed because there was people downloading stuff, so you had to figure out how to like make it viable so you could tour and stuff. So you started doing commercials and stuff, and that was the earliest days of that.
Yeah, the
Completely
first one I
normal.
remember was what was it? U2 and Vertigo was one of the iPod commercials I remember.
Yeah.
And yours was which song? Which song was it? Was it Are You Gonna Be My
I,
Girl?
I gonna be my girl.
Yeah,
Yeah.
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 We can get more into that in a minute, but first I want to back it up just a little. I wanted to know how you actually met the guys. I guess it was they formed
Oh,
in 2001, right? Cameron and Muncie
yeah.
met the brothers,
Yeah.
Nick
Yeah.
and Chris
And Nick,
Sester. Yeah.
yeah, at school. Yeah. So they were already gigging around, and I had my own band. Me and my mate from Geelong, who actually he lived in DC for a while. Actually, he's in a band called Cut Copy,
Oh.
big Australian sort of dance band. But he was living in DC for a while. He's in San Francisco now. We had a band, and we lived behind a pub, right? And we knew the people who ran the pub. And one day one day they called us up at like 4 PM and said, "Oh, there's a band that's meant to open up tonight, but they're from Sydney, but their van's broken down on the highway. Would you guys mind getting down here and doing a gig?"
Yeah.
And I was like, "Yeah, sure." Like we didn't have anything on. We worked it out. We like we lived behind the pub, so it was easy. We just came over. And that night when we played, Chris and Nick were in the crowd, and they were looking for a bass player for their band. And they saw me play, and they were like, "Hey, do you want to join our band?" And I was like, "No, I've already got a band." And then we hung out for the night, and I really got along with him. And me and Nick really bonded and talked about music, and we realized we were into the same stuff. And bands like Sloan from Canada that no one else really knew about. We didn't know anyone who knew of Sloan, this Canadian sort of band. I think they're from Halifax or something. And they're big in Canada, and that's kind of like, that's like all and sort of niche outside. And we really bonded over these kind of like, talking about music. So the next day I called up and was like, "Oh, is it too late to join the band?" And they're like, "No, come down, audition."
That's funny that at first you were like, "No, I'm good. I got a good gig." But then after you realized, wait, we all know the same obscure bands. All right, I'm in.
Yeah. You know what? It was just like, personal level. I just really gelled and had fun. And it was like, I think they liked it. I kind of said no first because they were still just a local band, but people were like starting to go to their shows and people were talking about them and stuff. So, I think, I think they were like, I just didn't jump at it. Like I thought about it and I called Nick back the next day and said, "Is it too late?" Imagine if I had not bothered to call him. And then
we're glad you did.
Yeah, in the audition, they'd like given me like they said, "I'll learn these 4 songs," and they gave me a CD with like 17 demos, all of which pretty much ended up on Get Born, our first album. And I was like, they said, learn for any of these 4 of these songs, and we'll do it. We'll go up to at the same pub. They knew the owners as well, so above that same pub, there was a big sort of old sort of ballroom or something. We all just dragged our gear in there and I had like a couple of days to learn the songs, but I just decided to learn all 17 of them and write new parts and all that kind of write completely new bass lines for everything and stuff. All that stuff you do when you're, 20 years old and you don't know that you have no shame, you're brash and bold. Like
a little overachiever.
I would probably not do that now. I would do the work, but I would never dare like go in somewhere and just have the nuts to go like, "No, I just wrote all the new bass lines for your songs."
Yeah.
And I remember someone was like, "Oh, you've written all new parts for the songs." And I was like, "Yeah, I want to be in your fucking band."
I'm trying to impress you. That's great.
Yeah. And then, then a couple of days later, they called me up and they said, "You're in." And then it was pretty much like from then it was like things were starting to bubble for the band already, and there was already a bit of heat on them.
Did they already have a name? Did they already have Jet, or was that after?
They were called Jet. They were
Okay.
called Jet.
And that's after the Paul McCartney song, the Wing song?
Yeah, yeah. The idea behind at the time, if you remember, there was heaps of bands with really long names, like Queens of the Stone Age, and you'll know us by the Trail of the Dead. And we'd see them written, and they'd all look small. And we thought if we have a big, and in Melbourne there was like, everyone had really long names. We thought if we do a short name, and there was a lot of the bands, so we didn't want to be a the band at the time. There was the Strokes, the White Stripes, the Vines. So if you write Jet, it's going to be bigger because it's only 3 letters, so it's going to take up more, space.
Yeah, you can do a bigger font.
When you're playing at small little gigs down the road, and you're just trying to get noticed. But
I love it. So brilliant. Then you signed with Elektra Records, and didn't you record that in LA?
Yeah, that was the first time I ever went out. That's the first time I ever left the country.
That's funny. It was your first time out of the country. So you joined a band named Jet, and then you hop on a Jet. So there you go.
Exactly, yeah. That's the first time I ever left Australia, was to go and record Get Born in LA. Yeah, we recorded that at Sunset Sound in LA with Dave Sardi. It was, none of us had ever been in a real studio like that before or anything. It's, when you think back about it, it sort of seems like someone else's life a little bit, like you've seen it on a documentary or a movie, but it's, it's pretty much, back then it was, get in. I'm impressed at how well we just took everything in our stride and just did it. But, when you don't know any better, when you're young and you're 21 years old, you don't know anything. So you have this like bravado and sense of security about everything. It's only as you get older, you start second guessing yourself, I think.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. When you're younger, you're filled with piss and vinegar, and you're
exactly
willing to do whatever. And all right, well then, I would love to do a deep dive on some of the songs on that album, because that album was massive. Like we all loved those songs. So the one you mentioned, "Are You Gonna Be My Girl," was massive. One of the iconic songs of that whole era. I like how it slowly builds, the tambourine, and then it kicks in, and the chorus is just like melting our faces. But then I love how it whose idea was it to then slow it down to deliver the title? Are you gonna be my girl? And then it comes back.
I don't know. I think that's Nick's. I mean, it's Nick and Cam wrote that one, so I think, I'm not sure the breakdown of it, how it happened, but I'd assume that was Nick, but I couldn't say for sure. But I guess it was it's a bit of alchemy, I think, those kind of tunes as well. Those tunes that we have them every few years where they just hit, bang, globally. And I mean, that's still the Simpsons just called us a couple of weeks ago and asked if they could use that song in The Simpsons, which is pretty wild considering.
We just had Hank Azaria on here the other day.
Oh, no shit. I love Hank Azaria. He's awesome.
Yeah, he's hilarious.
Yeah.
They were using the song.
They used the song the other day. Yeah, I think actually he does the character in the scene. It's the teenager with the croaky voice. I think that might be Hank Azaria. Does he do?
It might be. He does. He does Mo the bartender. He does the comic book guy.
Yeah, I know he does Mo and Wiggum and
Wiggum, and he used to do a poo, but he retired them, and then he does a bunch of them.
Yeah, I actually saw him do a really good article or interview about that, the thinking behind that, retiring him and why. Yeah, he seems like a really impressive guy. I know he's got a Bruce Springsteen cover band too, doesn't he?
That's what he was promoting.
Sorry, it's not Hank Azaria who does his voice. It's the guy who does Homer's voice. My mistake.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
Hey, it gave us a Hank Azaria tangent. So
exactly. Yeah. What was that?
No, I was just asking about "Are You Gonna Be My Girl?" But the same album also had "Cold Hard Bitch," and I love that.
Yeah.
When it first comes on, the way the guitars, it almost sounds like an AC/DC song, and then the way the lines are delivered, I'm picking up like a little bit of The Offspring or something, and then it becomes its own thing that's your guys. I don't know. I just love that it kind of morphs. Yeah. But take me into the structure.
I guess that one's probably the most. That's probably the most sort of. People would say it's sort of an AC/DC like song, but it's really not. I think it's got some of those elements of just like big open chords and stuff, but it's another. It's another song where the line's delivered in a gap, isn't it? I've just thought about that,
Are You Gonna Be My Girl? Yeah.
Yeah, that one. I think that's a song. Like in the States, I think there's a lot of people who don't realize those two songs are by the same band.
Really?
I think. Yeah.
You might be right. Yeah.
And that was a massive song on the rock radio format over there. Whereas I think I Remember My Girl was started on that kind of rock radio and then sort of moved up to kind of just more like mainstream everything radio.
Sure.
But Cold Hard Bitch was like a huge rock radio staple. It still is. Like I always hear from friends that it's, they'll be watching a basketball or something, and they'll have that'll be on or something like that. And we have one of our big AFL football teams here. Their women's team use it as their rev up song before they go out and play. Which
they
I've
get
heard.
pumped up.
Yeah,
The Cold Hard Bitch. That's hilarious.
Yeah. People love it, and it always goes down really well. And it's a really easy song to play. That one. That one's very easy. It's all feel.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's good. And Nick gets to. I mean, Nick's voice still sounds the same as it did, maybe even better than back when he was young. Like it's richer. He can still hit all those insane screams and stuff effortlessly. I don't know how he does it. He's never done a warm. His warm up is a glass of whiskey and a cigarette. He's not and he's not in his own dressing room with a steaming bowl of water and doing his regular vocal warm ups.
That's great. That's great. And hear that, folks? The voice is the same, if not better. So when you come to the show, you're in for a treat. When you hear Are You Gonna Be My Girl and Cold Hard Bitch, you remember them. But look what you've done is one that I think some people might not remember they know it, but I promise you when you put it on, you're going to know it. It's a slower one.
Yeah.
And to me, if Cold Hard Bitch was channeling AC/DC, this one is like you guys doing like a Beatles kind of a vibe. At least,
Absolutely.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
A lot of people
Absolutely.
point it to Oasis as like Beatles inspired, but this song, you just want to sit and just bask in it, man. But
it's a good slow. Yeah, it's a lovely song. Again, that's another one that I think these three songs have been in every single set we've ever done. We would never leave any of them out because they're just such. That actually was the highest chart in Australia because that was right on the full pop and the pop radio. That one, yeah. That's a good song. Again, they're all super simple. They're not complex songs. They're not, they're not like, they're clever, but they're not tricky, if you know what I mean. And sometimes that is the trick. Sometimes they're clever songs, but they're not difficult to play or difficult to sing, like some of them. I've seen a lot of people butcher Are You Gonna Be My Girl? Because, Nick's voice is such a big part of the sound of this band. He's got a once in a generation rock voice, that
totally.
guy.
That one's hard to replicate.
Yeah, but you're right. Look what you've done is that's the song that I think people don't think was us as well. They're like, when they realize like, oh, that's you guys as well.
It shows your versatility. You know what I mean?
Well, we're like, I don't know. Okay, you call us, there's a bird in Australia called a bowerbird, and it kind of goes around and picks up blue things, like little blue bits of plastic or blue flowers, and it makes it'll find the lid of this blue pen, and then it'll pick it up and it'll take it back to its nest, and it makes this nice array of blue things to attract a mate, So we're kind of like bowerbirds of music. We'll go around and we just pick out like things we like, and we're just making music for us, really. Like you can, everything's derivative. There's nothing new, and we just make shit we want to hear that we think's cool, and I think that's the way you got to do it.
I love that. The bowerbird.
We just
music.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, just look them up. They're pretty funny. Yeah.
Yeah, just careful you don't pick up too many blue things. You'll become the Blue Man Group. But
Although if I was the Blue Man Group, we could stay home and send another bunch of guys out touring for us.
No one would know.
We didn't want to.
The faces. No. They put on a good show.
Exactly.
By the way. No shade on the Blue Man Group. That was just a bad pun based on your bird analogy. But no, seriously, that album, Get Born. I mean, those three songs, everything else, like that is one of the greatest albums, at least in our lifetime. So then, is there? I don't want to say is there pressure on the second one, Shine On in 06, or is there more freedom? Do you feel like, all right, we've made it, we're touring with the Stones, we can do what we want?
Immense pressure. It was really stressful, to be honest. It was, I mean, you get like the cliches, you get your whole life to write your first album, and then you get 6 months to write your second album.
Exactly.
And we'd gone through a lot of stuff. Like Nick and Chris's father had died of cancer during Get Born, on touring Get Born. So we were meant to play Glastonbury, and he got really sick, and we had to cancel it. The guys had to go home to be with him.
Yeah.
This is right at the sort of right to when Get Born was blowing up. He was going down, but he didn't want us to stop because this was like the thing that was this was like one of the things that was just keeping him keeping his spirits up. But they got to a point where we had to just let them go home and be with their father, who was very, very sick. And so Shine On was kind of meant to be this cathartic record, but there was so much pressure on us as well. Like internally and externally. And we'd just gone through this, he was kind of, because my father died when I was a kid, and same as Cam. So he was like John Sester, the boy's dad, was kind of like the dad of the band. So it kind of like, it did affect everybody.
You all lost a father figure in a way.
Yeah. And so when we had that and had the pressure of, that of doing a second album after such a huge, because normally like your first album isn't the huge one, you know, you've got time to get
Right.
there, you've got time to learn the craft. But when your first album, your first song is a massive hit, it's like not complaining by
No,
any stretch, but
it's a
it
good
does.
problem to have, but
It,
yeah.
I mean, for us anyway, it's different for everybody, you know, and
Yeah.
you know, there's probably ways we probably should have dealt with things in different ways back then. But ultimately we made a cool record. And the other thing was the world had changed a lot between that record, our first record, and our second record. The music industry had changed drastically. You know, that's when there was YouTube, iTunes, you know, all the downloading, LimeWire, Napster, all they
Right.
were still like, and it's where we saw that downturn really in the music business. And people were still like the labels and everyone was still struggling to figure out where they fit and how it works,
Oh, the
you
whole
know. But
industry was
you
the
know,
whole industry
we
was
made a cool
scrambling,
record.
man. Everyone was scrambling to try to figure
Yeah,
out how to keep up with the technology. But you still had put your money where your mouth is. Like it still had hits on it. I don't want to,
yeah.
underrate it, but
Oh
yeah,
no,
but
not at all.
yeah.
No, they had Shine On as well was a real the song the title song was you know, Nick wrote about his old man. That's a beautiful song. We still do that in the sit. Nick does that solo on acoustic. It's a really cool moment.
Absolutely.
Um,
Well, how about the
but
third one?
yeah,
How about
changed.
Shaka Rock had She's a
Shaka
Genius
Rock.
in 17? Or had you had
Yeah,
enough time to grieve the loss of the father figure and
yeah.
you back on your
That was
foot?
yeah, absolutely. That we made that one in Austin, Texas, which was cool.
Oh, no
We
way.
spent a lot
That's
of
where
time
my
down there.
wife and I got
Yeah.
engaged.
Oh,
Nice.
Austin's cool,
Love
and
it.
this is like Austin, like then, which would have been, wow, that's like nearly would have been 2009 or eight, I can't,
Yeah.
or 10. I can't even remember when we were there. Probably
The
20
album was
20
'09, so yeah.
oh
Yeah.
09. So it would have been 2008. So Austin
Yeah.
was very different then.
Yeah.
You know, Austin now is like so big. Back then, it was still pretty tight. I haven't been back for a while, but it was cool. We lived there for a while. I loved living in Austin. It's such a cool town, and like they had summers like we do here as well. It's hot. You go swimming in the lobby, swim at the beach, but you
Yeah.
know, swimming in Barton
Swimming
Springs
down
and
by the what is that? The Stevie
all
Ray
the
Vaughan statue or whatever.
yeah,
Yeah.
and they're all those cool outdoor bars with the gravel floor and the bands on outside, like Stubbs Barbecue and stuff. Like such a cool
Yeah.
town.
Did you play Stubbs Barbecue or did you
We
just
played
go eat?
Stubbs, yeah, a couple of
Wow.
times. Yeah, we played there a bunch of times.
It's like the restaurant, but then there's like, if I remember, it's like a overlook down in the stages down below, I think. I'm trying to remember. Yeah, but it's good
Exactly.
food,
Yeah, it's
man.
like it's a big like outdoor,
Yeah.
big outdoor kind of thing. When we first got booked there was before we ever spent any time there. I'm like, we're playing at a barbecue joint. What the hell? What are they doing?
Yeah.
You know. But then we got there, we're like, okay, this makes sense. This is a proper gig.
Yeah. Exactly. And then there's the whole Dirty Six, the whole strip of the bar. Yeah. That's an awesome
Yeah.
town.
So that strip, that new strip that's sort of out. I think it was east,
It
and
was
you
like
could walk
shipping
around it. I like
containers.
that.
They'd built bars out of
Yeah.
weird, cool. Yeah. There's like,
Exactly. It was heaps of bars in old houses now. That wasn't there. That was all old houses and stuff back then.
yeah,
But yeah,
that's a
every
newer
time I
side.
go there,
Yeah.
I'm like, holy hell, this place has changed a lot. I guess a lot of people move there too. Pretty like it's a cool town, college town.
All right, so that was all in the build up to Shaka Rye. Okay, so you guys are riding high. You're all over pop culture. You were on a couple Spider-Man soundtracks, some Ninja Turtles, some
Mm.
WWE. You got they used it in a bunch of stuff. So why did you all disband there in 2012? I guess the first time, because then you came back around 2016 to 2019. But that first time, did you just need a break?
Yeah, we just like I think that it's hard sometimes keeping things on the road with big personality. Everyone's got a pretty big personality in this group,
Yeah,
and there's brothers, and there's historical evidence of how that works. There's one going on right now.
yeah,
That they've managed to get it back on the road. We've two
yeah,
of them know them quite well.
yeah,
But I mean, from back to the Kinks, those guys didn't get along. It's tough, and after a while, you just like you've had a bunch of success, and you just want to try something different, or you just want to start a family. Anyway, we did have a hiatus for a while, which seemed for a lot longer time. But then we got asked to go out on the road with Bruce Springsteen in 2017. So, and
nice.
when the boss calls you up, you probably best say yeah.
How do you know it wasn't Hank Azaria pretending
It's
to be?
true. It's true. Hey, I'd be happy with either.
Yeah, oh yeah, that'd be fun. Yeah, but no, your fans, myself included, we all missed you during that little gap there, from
Yeah,
what 2012 to 16 or 17, whenever the boss
yeah,
called you up. So,
yeah.
um,
Yeah.
I'm glad you
And look,
got back out there.
we did, and we've been like we've sort of been on. We've just thought it for a while. Okay, let's just do some shows here and there, and we didn't want to. Everyone's sort of grown and doing different projects and doing different different things in their life. So it was like, oh, let's just do things when they sound fun. So we did that for years. We just would get the call, like, oh, you want to go do a festival in Spain? It's good money. You can go and play here and here after. It'd be 10 days, and then you go back to your families because we've got kids and stuff now. And we're like, that sounds fun. And you do that for a while, and you're playing, you play the F1 Grand Prix here in Melbourne and things like that, and get all these cool things. But you start going like, we're just playing the same old songs over and over. And if we're going to keep doing this, we're going to want to like do something new, because that's what really drives you. Like, ultimately, we do understand that people want to hear those old tunes, but you need to be driven to play those old songs by the excitement of doing new stuff that's like fresh, and just a couple in a set is enough to like make it feel nice, and make it feel make it feel like a new thing. It just augments it a little bit, and it makes it just seem a lot fresher, with just a handful of new things, changing things around, swapping songs in and out, so you're not doing the same set every night.
Yeah.
And we do, it's good for punters if they're going to more than one show as well. Like they're like, wow, they played this one and not this one this night,
Yeah, it mixes it up. Well, I know Chris Sester is no longer with you guys, right? Is that right?
Yeah, he's not touring with us. Yeah.
Right. But you all did at least come back together there in 2023.
We did,
you got
yes.
inducted into the Australian Recording Industry Association Hall of Fame, right?
I've got this. This is what we got. This is the it's like our folks. Grammy, I guess. Yeah.
Nice.
We get a gold one for being Hall of Fame. Yeah.
The golden triangle.
But it's like the normal ones. We got heaps of these. These are like the equivalent of a Grammy, I guess, in Australia. That's the normal
awesome.
One. That's the gold one.
That is so awesome.
I'm in my studio, so that's why they're in here. I don't have them around the house.
That's all right. Hey, before I go, and we'll have to make it quick, but I'm a huge movie guy. So I'm always curious, you growing up in Australia, I guess in the 80s it would have been like, what, Mad Max franchise or Crocodile Dundee or I don't know. There's like the awards contenders. I'm thinking like Meryl Streep or Cry in the Dark. But what were your favorite?
Yeah, look, there's a movie called Chopper we all liked, which I think came out in the late 90s. About a real life Melbourne criminal, and it's all set in Melbourne about where we live.
Nice. Okay. Cool.
Chopper. Yeah, that was. It's pretty wild. It's pretty raw. But yeah, have a look at Chopper.
Cool. I will. And then I wanted to give Australia props for like your horror movies. I like some of the like Wolf Creek and the Babadook, and there was one called Talk to Me about an embalmed ham.
Have you seen Wake in Fright?
I haven't yet, but I'm going to put it on my list.
It's not a horror movie. It's a very strange Australian movie, but check out Wake in Fright.
Wake in Fright. All right. Yeah. Will do. Thanks for the rec. All right. Let's sell the tour one last time. Jet, coming to the 930 Club in DC on June 2nd. You don't want to miss it.
I'm looking forward to getting to DC. I'm going to go hopefully see the baseball. I want to go see the
Nats game.
Nats versus the Cubs. I think I have a day off, so I'm going to look at tickets for that.
All right. Well, I'm going to go to bed. You're going to drink coffee and get your day going, and have safe flights.
Yeah.
Mark Wilson, thank you so much.
Pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thanks so much for listening to Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. Our theme music is Scott Buckley's Clarion. Remember to give us a 5-star rating if you like what you hear. We'll see you next time.